Good afternoon. We would like to welcome you to this Provo Municipal Council work session. Appreciate your patience while we moved downstairs to have better accommodations for all of you who have taken an interest in this matter. We appreciate your attendance today. This meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube channel 17, which is different than our normal channel for work meetings, where it will also be available for on-demand viewing. Please be aware that the microphone is in the room, will pick up the noise of paper and other rustling objects. Further, be aware that the microphones can pick up side conversations. That's mostly for our benefit up here. Looks like, let's begin with the roll call then. Mr. Strachan.
Cliff Strachan.
Brian Jones.
David Harding.
Gary Winterton.
Kim Santiago.
Dave Connect.
George Stewart.
Kay Van Buren.
Dave Sewell.
Wayne Parker.
Thank you. The opening prayer will be offered by Dixon Holmes.
Our dear kind Heavenly Father, we're thankful to be in this public setting this day and with our elected officials and those from our community that are interested in the issues before them for our great city of Provo. And we are thankful for the blessings that Thou hast bestowed upon us individually and collectively as a community, for the many opportunities that we enjoy. Help us to remember those that are less fortunate, that we might lift their burdens and help them to attain things that are important to them. We pray that Thou would be with our elected officials this day as they make decisions and deliberate on issues that impact our community, that they might be mindful of both sides, and that we would have a spirit of civility and understanding and learning. And this we ask and pray in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Holmes. And given the nature of the unique situation where I'm wearing two hats for a couple more weeks, I've asked Council Vice Chair Dave Connect to conduct this meeting.
Thank you, Dave. Before we proceed with the agenda, I would like to remind those in attendance that although this is a public meeting, only the presenters and those seated at the council dais will be able to speak or ask questions unless otherwise allowed by the chair. First item for business is a presentation on the proposal to build a medical school on a portion of the East Bay Golf Course. And we will have representatives from Wasatch Education will give us a presentation.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Sewell and Councilman Connect, other honored council members. It's a pleasure for me to be able to stand before you again and share with you some facts, some truisms regarding the proposed medical school construction on the northeast sector of the golf course. I appreciate the opportunity of being able to also share these facts and these truths with those who are seated behind me, and want everyone here to know whether they're in favor of or not in favor of this proposal. That we come in peace. We're not trying to do anything to destroy relationships. We respect those who have an interest in the golfing community. I myself consider myself to be a former golfer, but I certainly don't want anybody here to think that we're adversarial. I just came from, and I don't know whether this is even appropriate, Councilman Connect, in regards to, we just barely came from the official announcement of the medical school at the Provo Town Center Mall. In a venue there that Scott Bowles and the Brixton Capital people have allowed us to use. And it was a very touching experience when Andy Norda as we made the announcement of the Norda Medical School, the Norda College of Osteopathic Medicine, as he shared about a 2-minute perspective on how his parents integrated into this community and the good that they did. And I don't know if it's appropriate to ask him to come up and share that, because I think it would be beneficial. I don't think it'll be, it's not one side or the other. I think it'd just be good for the residents here to hear his testimony of that experience. And since Andy is the representative of that great foundation, I thought it'd be appropriate if at least I could inquire as to whether or not he could come up.
I'd advise that it's their 20 minutes, however they want to use it.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. Andy?
Acting Mayor Sewell and members of the council, thanks for letting me share this. There was a time during the infancy of Nobel where a decision had to be made to stay in Utah or move to Silicon Valley, and against a lot of advice, my dad decided to stay here in Utah. And I said, "Why are you doing that?" And he said, "I grew up in Ogden. I got my EE degree because of a GI Bill, and I couldn't find work in Utah. There was work, but not a lot of it back then." He says, "I always felt bad that I had to leave town and I didn't get to take care of mom and dad. Grandkids didn't get to see mom and dad." He goes, "This town here," he says, "it's the most highly educated workforce I've come across." He goes, "and a lot of them are bilingual." He goes, "For an international company, we can make it work here." But the pure intent behind him building, a huge success here in Provo, it tears me up a little bit when I see what pure intent can do. He had the intent to make a huge company, but behind it all, he wanted families to not have to leave or leave town. So he looked at, his tenure at Novell as an investment in the community, Utah Valley, and Utah in general. And by doing this new medical school, he, in a way, continues to do that. And so it's an investment in the community. And I just thought you guys would like to hear about Ray Norda's intent. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, council members, for allowing him to share that. The Nordas are an iconic company here, and we're very, very pleased to be able to partner with them. Let's see, how do I, is that over here? Oh, okay, thank you. I have up on the screen it's kind of an excerpt of the vision of Provo City, and you say the Provo City, the values are faith, respect, and service to each other and our community, individual responsibility, our environment, and natural amenities. We support safe, desirable neighborhoods, a vibrant economy, and high-quality jobs, fiscally responsible governance, and lifelong education. And I will tell you, in all my experience in working with the council, that is a very, very effective and accurate description of what I see all of you living. I want you to know that we also support a vibrant economy and high-paying jobs, fiscally responsive government, and also lifelong learning education opportunities. As a young boy, I grew up in Spanish Fork. I'm a Utah County boy. I will tell you, I spent most of my young years here working in Provo, picking cherries and working in the, working on merit badges at BYU and all the other things that young boys do. I remember shopping in the old Sears building, which many of you probably don't remember, on 100 West, watching BYU football games. I spent a lot of time in Provo. Even though I was born and raised and in Spanish Fork, my My mother worked here as a single mother of 4 children. Since the age of 4, she became a single mother to me and spent most of her adult life working here in Provo at F.G. Ferry & Son. I don't know, I'm sure George probably remembers that. And also Safeway. She spent a lot of time working in Provo. So Provo was kind of a backyard second home for me as I grew up. After I left Spanish Fork as an adult and went to BYU and graduated from BYU, I then went to the University of Utah, and I do wear blue, by the way, but graduated from the University of Utah and then entered the United States Navy Medical Service Corps. And there I was committed for 3 years during Vietnam and ended up spending 20 years. That's where I met my lifelong friend and business partner and co-founder of Wasatch Education and Rocky Mountain University, Dr. Mike Skurja, who is here today. Mike and I engaged ourselves in teaching and training in our clinical electrophysiology specialty within the Navy. We spent a lot of times traveling around the United States teaching while we were in the Navy as naval officers. And following our retirement in the early 1990s, with both of us spending the equivalent of about 50 years in military service to our country, we decided that we would want to continue on our teaching opportunities, the things that we had done well while we were in the Navy, besides being clinical providers of patients. We believed firmly in the art and science of education. And so we started, we moved, we retired. He went with his family to San Diego. I returned here to the Provo area with my family. And we decided to start an institute here. Yeah, it's called the Institute of Clinical Electrophysiology. Many of you probably have never heard of that, but for 4 years, we actually had that business over in Brigham's Landing from 1994 to 1998. We recruited students from all over the United States who came in, faculty who came in and helped us teach the electrophysiology curriculum. At the end of that training, every single one of those, by the way, when they are out here, they stayed here in Provo. They ate food here in Provo. They walked, they participated in recreation activities in Provo. At the end of their training, at the very bottom of their certificate was very key words here. And again, it's near and dear to my heart because of the way I grew up. And that was the Institute of Clinical Electrophysiology, Provo, Utah. We brought great credit to Provo through that 4 years, and at that time, Mike and I decided that we would expand our vision and take that Institute of Clinical Electrophysiology into a whole different perspective. It was our desire to build the most prestigious, premier, world-class university in the world for graduate healthcare education. That was our intention. A university founded on the core principle of service. Our vision was to get the university accredited by the highest accreditation commission in the world through the United States Department of Education, through the Northwest Commission in Seattle. And then to turn those students, train them, and turn them out to become the most powerful healthcare providers that anyone else could provide them training to become in this country. That was our vision when we started in 1998. 3 years prior to that, during preparatory work, we worked hard to secure a facility, to identify faculty, to draft curricula. And in 1998, Rocky Mountain University of Health Professions and Wasatch Education was born here in Provo, Utah. From 1998 to 2011, for those 13 years, we developed programs in clinical electrophysiology, pediatric science, orthopedic and sports medicine, neurology, hand rehabilitation, geriatrics, cardiopulmonary pathophysiology, women's health, physical therapy, occupational therapy, health promotion and wellness, athletic training, and master's degree programs as well. Those were all doctoral programs. Our students came, they were educated, they stayed in Utah, in Provo, they resided here, they bought food here, they entertained while they were here, and again, when they graduated, at the bottom of their on their diploma, which said Rocky Mountain University of Health Professions, said Provo, Utah, at the very bottom. Now, we did attain our goal of becoming accredited through the most prestigious and reputable accreditation agency in the world, the Northwest Commission, through the United States Department of Education. It took us 13 years. We did that right here in Provo, the cost of about $10 million. Mayor John Curtis, in that day in February of 2011, Mayor Curtis had 1 year under his belt as a mayor. And we had developed a very superficial relationship with him. I hadn't gotten to know him quite yet. But I remember specifically the day that we received notice from the Accreditation Commission that Rocky Mountain University was going to become regionally accredited. It was the biggest day in the history of our university. After 13 years of working on that process at the cost that we spent doing that. And I remember calling Mayor and saying, Mayor, is there any way you can drop whatever you're doing and come over here and participate in the announcement to our faculty, to our staff, to our employees about this wonderful experience? And he did. I don't know what he dropped, but he did. And I'll never forget that because he had an interest in what we were doing because of what we were bringing to Provo, Utah. Fast forward, right now we have graduated over 2,000 graduates from Rocky Mountain University, from WEI. Those 2,000 graduates are seen right now somewhere in this country, including right here in Provo and Utah County and throughout Utah. Over 6 million patients a year are being seen by those 2,000 graduates. That's 25,000 patients a day are being seen by these graduates, all of which have on their diploma at the very bottom, Provo, Utah. They're being seen in PT, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech and language pathology, orthopedic and sports, neurology, all the other programs that I just said to you. Wherever those diplomas are hanging, either in hospital or hospital-based or school-based clinics, pediatric clinics or geriatric clinics, or in academic institutions or research facilities, Provo, Utah is at the bottom of that. Now, our students have, and our faculty have published over 800 refereed journal articles in over 260 peer-reviewed journals. That's a huge contribution to the new knowledge pool. And at the bottom of every one of those publications is a description of where they were when they did the research. And Rocky Mountain University is in 260 refereed, peer-reviewed journals, professional journals, Provo, Utah. They're graduating. Now I'm going to move on and skip a little bit of this, but I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about that because of my connections to Provo. And ever since Mayor Curtis came over in February of 2011 and he gave his welcome speech to us now as newly accredited institution, he put his arm around my shoulders and he said, "Welcome to Provo." And I promised him at that time, I will never leave Provo. The culture that is here in Provo is what draws our students here. It's not Salt Lake County. It's not Utah County. It's Provo. Our students are drawn here. We attract some of the highest esteemed faculty in the world in some of the universities who come to us. They pick up their stuff, they move their families, they quit their jobs, they move across country, and they settle here in Provo. And it's not the church, the LDS church, that brings them here. It's the culture that they all share with us here in Provo. Our graduates are affecting change in the way healthcare is delivered. We send out every year over 4,000 room nights from our students who come in from all 50 states. We have students representing all 50 states. 4,000 room nights to the local economy on hotel nights. Our students buy houses in Provo. They pay taxes in Provo. They shop for food and clothes and cars in Provo. They go to movie theaters and get entertainment here in Provo. When they come into Provo and the sign that says "Welcome Home," I've had many of them say, you know what, I feel that they made that sign for me. I feel like Provo was my home. Dr. Scourgeon and I had a vision in 2011, and the vision came from the fact that there were so many people in the state of Utah who were having to go outside of the state of Utah to receive medical education, including our native sons and daughters right here in Utah County, right here in Provo. Most of those, 300 of those, are from BYU alone, that have to leave this state to go to other states every year to attend medical school. So we felt like by doing feasibility studies and needs assessments and visioning conferences and doing the research to determine whether or not a medical school here was something that not only was in demand, but also was it something that we, as a university and as a Wasatch Education, can do. So it wasn't just about building a medical school, it was becoming united with partners such as the NORDA Foundation and other investors who are here with us today, who have put in $120 million so far toward this $148 million project. They didn't invest because of anything else, like return on their investment. You ask Andy Norda why his Norda Foundation invested. He won't say it's because of the returns on their money. He will tell you it's because of the community of Provo. Ray and Ty Norda had an interest in this community, in Utah County and in Provo. Our other investors have invested in the community. They're not investing in the medical school per se. They're investing in the community. And that's a huge thing for you all to understand. The Nordas are very socially minded, and I'm very, very honored and very humbled that the investors that are in this room with me now, right now, sitting behind me, have put up that kind of money to be invested in this, hopefully in this particular community. We have been able to, what we feel like, have been able to achieve the goal that we set of becoming the most prestigious university in graduate healthcare education in the United States. Now, I read in the newspaper this morning someone who was interviewed saying that about this proposed project, that the medical school will destroy East Bay. And I would ask how could all the good that we're doing and that we propose to do destroy East Bay? That is not, I want you to know, council members, that is not our intent. Our intent is not to destroy anything. Our intent is to build. Our intent is to give back. That's what we're here for. Why are we here? We are here, according to that slide, because 375 new physicians every year have to be created in Utah in order to meet the state's growing medical needs. We are here, and Andy Norda and the Norda Foundation and the other investors that are here because Utah ranks 49th out of 50 in the country for primary care physicians per capita. We're here because Utah ranks 43rd out of 50 in overall physicians to population ratios. That puts Utah near the very, very bottom in the United States as far as access to care. That's why physician assistants, and as Kim knows, nurse practitioners, it's a very good time to be either one of those right now in healthcare. We're here because more than 400 students from Utah, as I already said, leave the state every year. And we're also here because of the anticipated national physician shortage, that by 2025, 150,000 physician shortages. We're here to help create a solution to that problem. Now, this is something that you all know Scott Bowles, and he sent me a letter the other day. It's been a month or so ago, and I was very touched by what he said to me. This was a personal letter that he sent to me. And I don't want to embarrass him because I know he's here, but he said, we fully support adding, now he's talking about Brixton Capital and the good that they're doing in the East Bay and the South Provo area and trying to revitalize that area, which is one of our intentions as well, to build, to develop, to grow. He said, we fully support adding a medical school to the higher education opportunities of the community, to bring high-paying technical jobs to the area and to encourage development that raises the standard for East Bay and all of Provo. And I was touched by that, and I thought I'm going to just share that with you all since you all know him. I would like to take just a couple of minutes before I sit down and share with you what our proposal that we have submitted to you is, and I know it's not unfamiliar with any of you, but for at least the people in the audience, it may not be as familiar. And I want to emphasize that these are the true facts. These are not the facts that are circulating around in social media. These are not the facts that you've been reading on some of the local internet pieces. These are not the facts that are circulating out there through verbal communication. These are the actual facts of how this piece of property could be enhanced and how Provo City and Utah County in general can be enhanced. I'd like to draw your attention to the upper part of here. That's the very familiar piece that you know of, and that's the Nature Sunshine piece. Currently, we have that under contract, and that will serve as housing, and not only for our students and also perhaps some public, but also some retail space will also act as an entrance piece to the northern wedge of the golf course. So that's the first component of the first phase of the project. If you look into the purple area, of course, the retention pond, which is owned by Provo City, and we're going to continue to use that as a retention pond if we are successful in getting your approval for this. But the northern part of the northern wedge, if you see buildings 1 and 2, that connotates the medical school facilities, 225,000 square feet of medical school space. Number 3 over here is a parking structure that would be used to accommodate the medical school students and employees as well as future growth. Continuing on, if you look at and by the way, in order for us to do that, as you all know, it's going to require us to relocate 3 holes of the golf course, numbers 10, 11, and 12. Now, we heard from Val Hill this morning in our announcement that Val Hill says he thinks that the golfing gods have cursed him because every time he's on 10, 11, and 12, he never, ever can master those holes. Nonetheless, we have to relocate those 3 holes, and we plan on doing that, as you know, to the southeastern sector of Provo. Now, my understanding is that part of that relocation will include also to build an island hole, which my understanding is that's going to be the only island hole in the entire state of Utah, and I don't know if that's a true statement or not. If you look at the next phase, by the way, that first phase is the first 7 years, which would be from 2018 through 2024-ish. The next phase of that would start in 2024 and go from year 8 to year 15. And in year 2024, okay, I'm going to come back to these in just a second, but I know we need to move on. In phase 2, would be from 2024, where you see buildings 4, 5, and 6. 4 and 7 will be Rocky Mountain University relocation buildings from our current campus on the Novell campus. Number 6 is a Rocky Mountain University Research Center, and number 5 would be a student union for all that campus. The parking garage there would accommodate all of that, and this, again, is all on the northern wedge, the southern wedge being where the yellow is. Now, if I can go back just to look at this building, I'll just show you this building here. I've gone to 7 different states in the United States over the last little while, including Washington and Alabama, Virginia, South Carolina, several other states. And I brought back, just from my recent trip to Alabama, this is the Auburn campus of the VIA College of Osteopathic Medicine. It's a beautiful facility. If you look at the other version, the front end version of that, we want to capture the architecture that's going to blend in with the current architecture here in Provo, the traditional type of architecture. We don't want to be contemporary in the building that we choose to pursue with this structure. So we expect that all those buildings on that site that you just saw are going to be very, very beautiful buildings. Coming in from the southern corridor, is going to be a very beautiful site for those who come into Provo from the southern sector. The next phase, which will be the third phase, is what we have as a proposal to the commission, to the council, is a 14-acre parcel which we have referred to as the southern wedge, and that's portrayed here in the in the gold and yellow. The southern wedge is another thing that would require us to relocate another 3 holes of the golf course. Now notice the year. That would be 2033 or later, and probably later. But at least the option, the proposed option would be for 2033, that we would be able to take the 14 acres of the southern wedge and use that to expand the healthcare and medical school campuses to include healthcare clinics, biomedical and biotechnology, research facilities, possibly an optometry school, a podiatry school, some retail space, and some medical devices. And you'll see number 9 over here on the gold is representation of a clinic that we were proposed, one clinic that we would propose be built on that southern wedge. So 3 holes of the golf course would be required to be relocated should that happen in 2033 or later. Now, I would like to end by just reminding the council from the discussion we had not too long ago. We recently hired an independent economic impact company called Bonneville Research out of Salt Lake City, and they did an independent research, economic impact. And I'd really like to re-emphasize this to the council as well as particularly introduce this to the people sitting behind me. During just the Norda College of Osteopathic Medicine construction, that's before Rocky Mountain University relocates itself to that site, more than $62 million would be invested in this community in construction business. 236 construction-related jobs, and they would bring in over 121 high-paying medical school jobs to this city. Now, that's just the Norda College of Osteopathic Medicine in the first 7 to 8 years. If you add in Rocky Mountain University with the Norda College of Osteopathic Medicine, the combined economic impact on this community and this county will be $100 million annually. Beginning in 2024 and continuing, approximately 1,550 new jobs will be added. More than $83 million in construction business total for those 2 medical institutions. More than $8 million will be directed to the Provo School District in the first 15 years. And as Bob Springmeyer brought out when he talked to you all a couple of weeks ago, the medical school will be an attractor to other health, medical, biomedical, biotechnology, and related spin-off businesses. Hundreds of additional jobs and much more property tax and revenues for this community. Now, we will continue to be a wonderful business in Provo as long as Provo wants us to be here. I've always felt Provo was my home, and as long as we feel that Provo is willing to have us here, we're willing to be here and bring the great credit to Provo and recognition to this great city that we've already done in the last 20 years and will continue to do. We want to represent the values and the vision that was set forth by the Provo City forefathers and foremothers. We want to be a good neighbor, bringing value and business to the East Bay Golf Course. In fact, 500 to 600 of our employees and our students on that campus, most of them are golfers. A lot of them are golfers, and we expect that there'll be some sort of a spike in the annual usage rates. I can't quote that as a benefit, but I know that we're very health conscious, and having golf that close, we would hope that we could be part of the East Bay family. We want to provide the junior and senior high school students of the Provo School District with health and medical internship experiences to stimulate their desires and their interest in pursuing medical and healthcare careers. That's one of the things that is going to benefit the junior and senior high schools. Now, in closing, we want to let you all know, and especially those behind us, that we will take good care of this property. There's going to be significant green space in and around the campus. Park-like atmosphere to protect and preserve the environment, nature, wildlife, and bird life. We want to offer a beautiful and relaxing environment for students, faculty, and visitors. Natural walkways, trails. Again, protecting the fowl, the wildlife. No cement jungles. We're not going to be, no disrespect to Thanksgiving Point, but we're not going to be another Thanksgiving Point. We want to do our part to stimulate and revitalize East Bay and South Provo. Now, this is an interesting statistic that you have to step out of where you are right now and into the future. Besides the economic impact of over $1 billion in the first 10 years of operation and the 3 years of development, more than 8,750 medical student physicians over the first 50 years of the expected 100-year life cycle for this medical school. Over the first 50 years, if you look at the graduates of the first 50 classes of the medical school, over 40 years that they'll practice, those students graduating from Provo, Utah, will see over 1.4 billion patients. Now, if you add into that the number of family members that are always caught up whenever someone is sick, it could be over 4 billion people in this world who are influenced by graduates of this medical school from Provo, Utah. Just in the first 50 classes that graduate. University of Utah's medical school started in 1903. They're 114 years old. We do not anticipate this medical school being less than 100 years old. Here's our timelines. In March of 2019, we would anticipate groundbreaking. And of course, we will communicate with and work with the city and East Bay golfing community on that. Construction as well. Construction will be completed in January of 21. Applications would start being received at that time. The first class would begin in August of that year, 2021. In May of 2024, RMU campus would be relocated, and in between 24 and 26, the RMU medical school expansion would occur. Now remember, all of that is before the 2033 cycle for the southern wedge coming in as an option. I'll end by quoting again what I just said, what I heard from, and what I read in an article this morning about someone quoted saying that if we are allowed to come on here, that we would destroy East Bay. I would ask you all to consider, truly, does all that look like our intent is to destroy East Bay? Our intent is to revitalize East Bay, revitalize South Provo, to create opportunities for our Native sons and daughters, our children. They don't have to leave Utah to go to medical school. To be able to send them out into the world and let them have positive patient encounters, make a difference, whether they're surgeons, whether they're pediatricians, whether they're psychiatrists, whether they're orthopedists, whatever specialty they are. We desire to give, not take away. I appreciate the time. Thank you very much for your attention. And do I open it up for questions, or how do we do that, Councilman?
I think we'll probably reserve questions unless there's something really pressing and hear from our Parks Department.
Okay. Very good. Thank you very much for your attention. Appreciate the opportunity.
I want to say thank you for this opportunity. I feel like our job today is to relate this recent proposal to the current site and current operations that are happening at the East Bay Golf Course. I'll be joined by some of our best talent in Parks and Recreation, Brett Watson, our golf professional and manager, and also Doug Robbins, assistant director, and I'll be bringing up the out of the bullpen at the end with some final comments. But this time I'll defer over to Brett Watson.
Again, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you all this afternoon. East Bay Golf Course was originally just to the side. Got it. Sorry, excuse me. Originally, the Timpanogos Golf Course was at the site where the current Sam's Club and Novell and the East Bay shopping area is now. It sat there until the mid-1980s before it was moved to the south where the current East Bay site is now. In that time, and since that time, over 100 years, golf has seen ups and downs, but not really in Provo. Provo golf is growing rapidly, especially amongst young people. And if you look there, more than 55% of the golfers that use East Bay are under the age of 40. So we hear a lot of myths and national trends that are saying that, you know, golf is dying and it's not popular amongst young people. That's not true, especially here in Provo. Our student rounds from all of the universities in the area have doubled in the last 5 years, and out of that, the BYU and UVU classes have tripled just in the last year alone. One of the biggest trends we're seeing are more women taking up the game of golf too. That's actually a national trend, and we're seeing that at East Bay as well. This is a snapshot of the rounds played, broken down by city, but each of those cities has one public golf course, and so it kind of gives you an idea of where we set up. Our nearest competitor is about 10,000 rounds short, and then as you can see, it drops off from there.
East Bay, this past year in our current youth statistics. So as of right now, we're on pace to have over 70,000 rounds. That is a new record at East Bay. And certainly, we've estimated that over 250,000 people have been to the golf course just this year in many various ways. We've sold over 20,000 buckets of range balls. That's up 33% from last year. Like I said, this has been our busiest year in history, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's our longest sustained period at the East Bay site of being left alone with consistency. It allows us to grow. Our Par 3 junior course, which we're here about today, is 15% of that revenue and 15% of our business. Because of that and because of the longest period of consistency, we're becoming what we were originally designed to be, and that was a community hub, a community facility for not just Provo, but the entire Utah Valley area, which has made us the busiest course. A lot of times you'll see the subsidy may come up about golf, and it's a subsidized sport. Our hope this next fiscal year is to have a complete elimination of that subsidy. And so as we go into the public discussions with that, we will present that to you. Just in the last 2 years, or this year and into next year, we'll host 3 state high school championships. Those are over a period of 2 days. That brings in thousands of people from all over the state. They're staying in Provo, shopping in Provo. Same goes for statewide qualifiers. Again, they need to come to Provo, stay here. And then the other events that we host, like the Provo Open, which for the majority of its infancy and then as it got into its bigger years was supported by the Norda Foundation. Millions of dollars was put towards charity and some mainly dealing with cleft palates. This past year we were honored to be the first ever host of the Utah Women's Open. That made Provo and East Bay and Timpanogos golf courses the first golf courses in the state to host every single event that the state of Utah can host. It was a tremendous honor, and to show that how well they liked East Bay and liked Provo, they've asked to come back for the next 3 years, and then we'll sit down and talk again in conjunction with the Utah Open. They've asked us to host the Utah State Amateur, which is the oldest and longest continuous tournament in the world, in 2020. So that's also a major championship that brings people from all over the state and frankly over the western United States in. This past September, we hosted the BYU Cross Country Fall Autumn Classic. We signed a 10-year agreement with them to bring them in every year. This past event, it was an estimated 5,000 people were there on that Saturday and the days leading up to it. Those groups are coming in, staying in Provo, eating in Provo, sleeping in Provo, spending their dollars in Provo, and that's just the one event. In conjunction with that, we sat down with the leaders at BYU and have secured the 2018 and 2021 NCAA Cross Country Championships. That's an estimated 10,000 people come into those 2 events. They're both hosted in November, and we're able to host those things because of the unique setup of East Bay Golf Course. Our youth programs. We host hundreds of juniors throughout the state and all over the county, both in leagues and in camps and some things with BYU, and Nike has a camp that's coming next year. As part of that, there's a national movement called the Youth on Course Foundation. Youth on Course allows junior golfers to play for $1. So the stigma of golf's too expensive or it's a rich white man's sport, it just doesn't jive with that, and it's not seen here. And of the Youth on Course program, we are 33% of the state's junior users. So 33% of those junior golfers are coming to play in Provo and East Bay. They're coming from everywhere. In addition to that, we host about 8 to 10 high school events per year. We just hosted the 2017 1A state titles, and then we'll host the 2018. It'll be a boys championship in the fall. Another thing that we were just asked was to be the first host site of the First Tee of Utah County. That's an after-school program and an in-school program to get kids out on the course, to get them active, to get them playing. And so we're really excited to start that program next spring. We talk about the home of high school golf and college golf. Since 2012, there have been 13 individual and team state titles. We're the home school or the home course to both Provo and Timpview, but also to Mountain View and Orem, and the host of Utah Valley's men's and women's golf teams. We also host BYU as a secondary course to Riverside, although I feel like they're there a lot more than the secondary. Why is East Bay Golf Course important? Well, one of this slide, and I'm sure we've all seen this, is the total population, or the top 10 populations in Utah by city. And as you can see, that Provo only has one public golf course. That's why this is such a hot topic and why it's important. It's not like there are 6 other choices like there is in Salt Lake. Councilman Harding, I'm going to use your quote again because we tried so hard to sum this up, and if you don't mind, I'll read it. And he quotes, "Let's not be too quick to sell off parks and rec venues or programs that only serve a minority interest group. A majority of the residents don't play tennis. Should we sell all the courts? The ice sheet doesn't attract a majority of the residents. Shall we join the county in trying to sell it? Our rec league soccer program is pretty popular, but not compared to the total population of the city. The Provo River Trail, Rock Canyon, the rec center, popular, not visited by a majority. Parks taken individually don't make the cut, but taken together, the city provides an awesome array of recreation opportunities. There should be something of interest to nearly everyone." I think that's such a powerful statement in the fact that the niche activity, yes, it's a niche activity, but so's everything else. And taken as a whole, that's what allows us to win all those awards and have such a wonderful quality of life for our residents. Golf is affordable at East Bay for everyone in Provo. So a lot of times you'll hear Riverside is the answer. Riverside's for the upper 5% and a public or a private golf course. East Bay is a prolific developer of golfers of all ages. That's one of the beauties of it. It's a community legacy and an asset. It is the front and center of the south end of Provo. It's gorgeous. It's a beautiful sight when you come into the south end of Provo. It's par 3 executive course. Again, why we're here. It's what makes it unique and special. It allows us to provide that community event space, the cross-country meets, the concerts, anything that we can host those there. And in addition to that, still be a destination facility. Still bring in championship players from the PGA Tour all the way down to a 4-year-old that's learning how to play golf with his family for $1. Next would be the economic impact. I could stand up here and spout off numbers about how many millions and millions of dollars we bring into the city. Fact is, one fact we know is that golf is a larger economic producer than skiing in the state of Utah. So as I joked, we should probably have the best golf in Utah on our license plates, or best for skiing. All of these logos are just groups that we've worked with this past year in facilitating business and some of the things that they've done at the golf course, whether it's a golf tournament, meetings upstairs, those types of things. I can't honestly give you the answer right now with the amount of economic revenue that's generated in the city. But I can tell you that people come into Provo, they're spending their dollars, they're coming to East Bay, they're leaving and going to Home Depot, they're going to various places, they're buying gas. And not only that, we don't know what the amount of people coming in, what business deals are occurring on the golf course. I've been a part of them, and some of them generate millions of dollars. In fact, Vox Marketing has their golf tournament at the beginning, or at the end of the year every year, and they bring in an estimated $20 million off of it. Their quote was, "If Provo City is thinking of changing or getting rid of East Bay, that makes us question whether or not we want to stay in Provo." I don't know if that carries across the rest of that board, but it's certainly an option or an idea that is out there. Last of all, we talked about it, it's on a landfill. So yes, if we could go back and say, man, we don't want to dump our trash next to where I-15 could be, we probably all in this room would go do that. But unfortunately, we don't. The greatest part about that is the topography. It's flat. We're able to host anybody. They can walk it from ages 3 to 100. It's extended season. Fortunately, with the methane underneath us, we melt a little faster than everyone else. And so we're open for play a little earlier than everyone else. One of the things through the ups and downs of golf in Provo that stayed consistent has been our customer service. And we're affordable and efficient. What I mean by efficient is our water bill is not that high because we use reclaimed water. So a lot of golf courses don't have that luxury. We do. And then lastly, our junior course, our executive course, where we can build golfers, creates our own future. It keeps us sustained. It's 15% of the revenue. It's where all of our programming starts, from the high schools to the universities to the youth on course. Again, everyone can use it. Everyone can play on it. It's the barrier breaker for golf. And then cross-country, special events, foot golf, all of those different types of things don't occur in Provo if we don't have that executive course. Those are where those things happen. This is just the last cross-country meet that we hosted in September. Again, as I said, there were about 5,000 people. Almost every single high school from the state of Utah, southern Wyoming, southern Idaho, were here over a couple days using the facility. And then, we've talked about it earlier. We've heard what do the residents of Provo feel or the area. This is this morning's Daily Herald poll. I think that's a strong answer as to how residents feel about it. Lastly, I just wanted to touch on why I love my job and why East Bay is so cool and so important. Top left corner is a family. The young man in the front in the Captain America shirt was recently diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. And the Aloha Golf Classic, which Mayor-elect Kafusi and Mayor Curtis have helped us with in the past, was able to provide that family some money to help with their medical bills. The middle is a family at the Utah Women's Open. The rest are just different events that happen in East Bay, from a polar plunge to a ping pong tournament to a wedding. All of those different things occur at East Bay in the way that it's set up now in its current form. And I thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, thank you. I had the opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the unique site characteristics down at the East Bay Golf Course. Provo happens to have one of the largest population densities due to census data that's received in 2010 of any community its size in the United States. And because of that density, and as the city continues to grow, the opportunity to really sprawl is becoming a limited option. Things are going much more vertical, as we can see downtown. And so the need for this type of open space that we currently enjoy at the golf course is going to be even needed more and more in the future. Landfill conditions right now that exist underneath the small soil cap that we have is managed quite well by the golf course. And all of these species that you see on this slide exist and make the golf course their home as habitat. It is also the confluence of several small streams as they flow to Utah Lake. Speaking about water, it is really critical to this site. Many people in the community don't know that when they use their sink or send some household water down the drain, what they're doing is watering and irrigating their golf course. We have aeration systems throughout these ponds, which further filters the water through the soils and cleans it as it heads to Utah Lake. That really helps to offset some of those algal bloom issues that are occurring more frequently in Utah Lake. This low-cost irrigation is a real competitive advantage for us. We have some pump costs that run our pumps to pump this water into our irrigation system, but we don't pay culinary water charges. And so that's a real benefit to us. The lakes were constructed on this course with some federal money to create a floodplain to protect the city. And these mediation to actually fill these and build upon them would require some permits, some mitigation credits, and these costs and also the risks involved in doing so need to be fully explored. Some other site considerations are the instability due to the gases that Brett mentioned earlier, and the 13 plus feet of trash throughout the site that was found in the geotechnical boring samples that were done. The geotech indicates that these are poor soils for easy construction, so it'll be somewhat a complex process to build multi-story buildings on this site. The good news is this site is currently maintained in a stable condition as a golf course, but it should be clearly understood that any alteration to the site would expose the city to additional risks and costs that need to be carefully considered. So when the golf course was capped, they were working under some different environmental regulations. This diagram here shows some of the more current modern mitigation techniques that are used with a non-permeable membrane, and then venting also the gases that are produced from landfill sites away. So we're really dealing with just a soil cap, and right now it's working quite well, but any alteration that would also expose us to those risks. We've got some new EPA regulations that need to be considered. And then also there's lots of examples of when these types of projects, these development projects, have not been successful. You don't have to go very far to see in Spanish Fork. They've had an experience there, and other places throughout the country. It doesn't take an exhaustive Google search to find examples, many examples of where this kind of project failed. So I think what we're trying to say is that any pursuit of this proposal should be gone into with eyes wide open, all the costs and all the risks exposed, so that a wise decision can be made. So considering all of these site considerations, to be sure any change to what we currently have at this site exposes potentially to these risks and additional costs. And we would argue at this point that the golf course may indeed meet the highest and best use for this property, for the community and its needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to finish out, I will go over the proposal that we have recently received and relate it to the impact on the facility. So the first property we're talking about, shaded in green, is the Nature's Sunshine property. It's privately held. So the proposal on this property, and Wayne and Dixon Holmes may have to correct me on some of the negotiations, so they were the lead negotiators on this, but right now, this is talked about as part of this proposal. They will be reimbursed for their purchase price for Nature's Sunshine by the city. And then the acreage, which is to the left, is owned by Provo City. So that would be another 1.6 acres that would be provided at no cost to the medical school development. And also any mitigation about land and water and or wetlands would be, those costs would be covered by Provo City. We're looking at probably that reimbursement to be somewhere around $2.5 million for the Nature's Sunshine property for the purchase. I should be clicking my clicker more to keep up with my own talk here. All right, 10, 11, 12. This is what we term the north wedge. This is 21 acres, and if you apply the same value down here as you do up here, just by the purchase price and offer that was done up here at approximately $300,000 per acre, that is approximately $6.3 million of value. Out of this, there is the agreement is that the medical school development will cover the cost of the development of the 3 holes on the former Cooney property. So as I look at it, we have 18 holes now, no matter, I've got a slice too, so the water does bother me when I golf also, but we're going from 18 holes now and bringing back 3 holes brings us back to 18. So when you're looking at the actual purchase price, it's mitigation costs, it's not purchase costs. As part of their proposed agreement, that we would be utilizing them as the contractor to put in the 3 holes on the Cooney property, the 3 mitigation holes. To me, that is almost like literally paying yourself. And I think contractor motivated by cost savings, I don't know, and keeping those cost savings, I don't know if that delivers probably the best quality 3 holes that we would be looking for. And it does get to that point, mitigation does not equal compensation. We come back to where we were as a golf course with 18 holes of championship golf, and it's completely mitigated, but that estimated $6.3 million in value is not received by Provo City. On the south wedge, this is 15 years at least out. So included in the agreement is a pricing index, which will determine the future value of this based on whatever is negotiated as part of these terms. So it would not be, from what I understand, the current part of the proposal would not be part of the appraisal that they receive at that time. This is where we see the drastic change of golf, all those pretty pictures of cross-country meets and diverse use of the golf course and younger use, because this would most likely take out the junior golf course, because those holes would have to be most likely located there. Then the option for this property is held by the developer. Obviously, we have a preference, and we like our administration and leaders that are elected, and we would like that decision to be held with our elected officials and not deferred to a developer for a later decision. And that does get us to that idea, who should make this decision for golf in our community? Is it a developer looking for possible profit base, or is it somebody that is looking out for our community as a whole? And then the balance of the course, 50 years that this group would hold a right of first refusal for the balance of the course. And that really, depending on how those play out, could be the end of the golf course. Before we went into today, this was the only picture I had seen of the development for the proposed development for the golf course. Obviously, there are more maps here. I did get emailed when I was sitting upstairs. We had to do this presentation sometime, so I had to go with the information that I had. And so you can see that the major properties are located in the 10, 11, and 12, and you can see that the Nature Sunshine property and even this, even though they are not shown here, are even somewhat speculative on their site plan. As we talk about a major project like this, I think we probably should have more specifics on what is going on these different areas. These two articles came out the day of Councilmember Van Buren's rally. And it talked about a win-win solution. And you can see from the project, it's a little more complicated than that. I think we'd all love win-win, and I think we can still get there, and I really feel confident in that. I think the bones of a win-win project are land purchase that is balanced, the specifics on how the 3 holes are replaced, how future land interests are developed. I would say the reason we had to move this meeting today is probably because of the option more than anything, in that the golfers would like to work with their elected officials on the future of golf and not defer that to a developer. And then if there are any capital and any funds or proceeds that come out of this, which right now there is not, that we could show our commitment to the golf course and to citizens and make some of those improvements along the way that have been deferred. This is how golf has reacted to perception and or decisions over the years. You see, it starts out with a golf course project where holes were moved. You can see that anytime a course goes under construction, it takes a major hit. So we took a drop here. A decision to privatize golf was here. Now, one thing that's noted after that is this rise in use. I made the comment earlier today, I think a chimpanzee could have managed golf during the Tiger Woods era and seen raises in play. But you can see after lack of investment and management techniques that privatization starts to drop on its own with no project related to it. Provo City buys out of that private management contract here. We start to see the increase. Then Southgate is proposed and some construction is done. We see it diminish going down here. And then at this point, we decide to move away from the finance managing the golf course model to Parks and Recreation managing that model. And I think you can see how the graph goes up. I fixed those years for you, Cliff, on that. So let me just talk about golf's true story. Golf's true story is efficiency in government. I've said at last couple of years at our budget meetings when we are talking about the rec center covering its costs, covering its future needs, and giving $500,000 back to the general fund, that the golf course is Provo's next success story after that. And we're very proud of what is happening there, and extremely proud of our golf professional and manager, Brett Watson. We have the best in the industry here. We are going to propose subsidy elimination in this next budget, depending on what is happening with the decision process here. We do all this by increasing use. You saw how high we are used, and decreasing our subsidy. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see that Provo uses their recreation facilities at a high level. We've seen this at the ice arena. We see this at the Covey Center. We've seen this at the Recreation Center also. And there's not a community that would not trade for East Bay's pro forma, and it's something we're very proud of. The medical school spends a lot of time on selling their need in the community. And I hope you guys know that through every meeting the way it's been, there's never been a pitch about one versus the other. What we just needed to understand together is the impacts on a facility that has an existing use and why that use is important and why that vibrant facility is important to our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I believe that completes the presentations from both sides. And did we have any discussion at this point with the council, or did we want to move to the next item?
I'd like to get copies of what we're being proposed for now, so that we can have those to study and to look at and see. I haven't seen those. This is the first time that I've seen some of these things, and I'd like to get some detail on those. And how do we go about that? Cliff, can you get those for us from the administration so that we know what we're dealing with here?
Dixon, is what you sent me, is that still a current? So if we got copies of that, I would, okay. Thank you.
I'd like to ask Dixon some questions. It was stated that we would be subsidizing the Nature Sunshine acquisition by Rocky Mountain University. My understanding is it's a tax increment. Could you explain the difference and what actually would be happening?
So the way the current proposal is currently structured is that Provo City would not purchase the Nature Sunshine piece. That would be purchased by Rocky Mountain University of Health Professionals, or Wasatch, let me correct that, by Wasatch Educational, who is the parent company for Rocky Mountain. The main purpose for acquiring that piece of property is for access, but they also want to be able to control what happens on that piece of property. And so they are acquiring it, and the city, and this has been a very iterative process, back and forth. And so the current proposal is that they would purchase the property up front. The city would create a community development area, which would require the city, the school district, and Utah County to participate with that.
And have those entities agreed to do that yet?
That would have to be determined in the future. Again, that's not established right now, but that's one of the deal points that the city would agree to work towards that. Thanks. And then they would be able to earn up to half of the cost of that based on the terms. Most terms on CDAs right now are between 10 and 12 years. That's a parameter that the school district has given us. Based on the valuation of the property, they would have the ability to earn up to half of that. And if it's not a significant cash investment as far as the buildings, then they would, performance-based essentially, they may not be able to earn up to half their money within that time period.
Have we done this for other locations, other projects?
The redevelopment agency has purchased land, written down land costs, help acquire land for several projects in Provo City.
Examples?
Town Center Mall, Mountain Vista Business Center, the former Ironton property. Several projects right now that are still under negotiation, but in downtown where the Sears building is currently being demolished or has been demolished. It's being contemplated at the mix for Plumtree Plaza, or formerly Plumtree Plaza. Those are all redevelopment area projects. The Wells Fargo building, the Zions building.
How about the airport?
The airport, yes, for the airport ramp, yes, that was a tax increment deal, yes.
Thank you. So literally, it's really not, we're not subsidizing it. We're doing something we've done before for other projects to.
So there's no cash out of Provo City's pocket for purchasing. Again, they have to earn that back through performance-based measures. Again, adding value to the property. That's also above the current property tax that's currently being paid on the property. Right. Because it's owned by Nature Sunshine, although they haven't built on it, it does have a tax valuation. This would all be above that baseline.
Right, so we still get what we get now, and this is what they,
We would continue to receive that, and this is again,
what they bring
based
to the
on,
property.
based on their capital investment on the project, that would set a new valuation on the property. The additional money coming into that, a portion of that would go back to reimburse them for their initial cost. And as of right now, we're talking about half of that cost.
Thank you.
What is the basis of that nature sunshine? Have we got a basis established yet, or will,
Basis for the taxes or basis for the value?
a basis for the taxes?
Uh,
I guess the golf course is a zero basis.
That's correct. Well, right now, though, the way this is contemplated, it's only on the nature sunshine piece that would bring in the valuation, not the golf course.
So would we not, if they put buildings on the golf course, or would those not be taxable? Would that
That would
not
be
be
up
part
to-
of the increment?
That would be up to the city, but the way this has been contemplated, it's for the nature sunshine piece only,
So the increment would be only on the nature sunshine piece?
based on what they put
And the
into.
tax that would be built on the buildings that would be built on the golf course would be at full tax rate to the
That's correct.
community. And then, what is the basis on the nature sunshine? Didn't they receive that at a pretty good deal? So their basis is nothing, maybe ours is nothing too, on that, I don't know.
Give me 2 seconds and I can tell you what the property tax is on that property. But they purchased that property probably 20-plus years ago
Did they purchase it
from Provo City.
from Provo City?
There was 15 closings or extended closings on that property. They didn't close overnight. It took a while to get there. I can get you that
I
number.
can look that up online myself also, as far as
Let me
the.
get it for the
particular
public good.
pieces.
I have some more questions.
Oh, sorry.
There was some concern about the geotech that's been done on the property. My understanding is Rocky Mountain has done sufficient geotech to feel comfortable to build a campus there.
That is going to be their risk and their opportunity, yes.
It's only their risk.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Dave.
I haven't seen a copy of the proposal yet, but I was wondering, are there any conditions on the option?
The way that the conditions are set now, Rocky Mount, or Wasatch Educational has requested an option on the southern wedge. If we go back to one of the later aerials. Go to the site plan. I think one of the ones that Scott had would be just fine. Go back a couple slides, please. But on the southern wedge, Wasatch Educational has proposed an option on that piece of property that could not be exercised before 15 years. Keep going. There you go. Okay. That could not be exercised for 15 years. It would require a 3-year notice. So in year 12, they would have to tell us that they would like to exercise that option. The performance measures are that they would have to maximize the property development on the nature sunshine piece and on the north wedge before they could exercise the option going into the southern wedge. They would also have to maintain their accreditation as a medical school, and it would also have to be continued as a successfully operated medical school, and we would interpret that to be at full capacity or in an upwardly trending as far as their enrollments, not declining or struggling. That would be the criteria for as it's currently being requested for that proposal, for an option.
Was there any discussion about relocating holes that would be removed from the second wedge?
Okay, so, yeah, if I can just, sure. So the proposal would be that at the end of the day, if the option was exercised and the city agreed to that on the southern wedge, and part of the process that we are currently in, and Scott could probably give us an update on that, the city did go out for
request for proposal for professional golf course designers, just to design a golf course. I don't know where we're at in that process. Okay, so professionals are still submitting on that. Part of what that design group would be tasked with is the design of the Cooney property to receive the 3 new holes. They would also be asked to look at if the city did offer or consent to an option on the southern wedge, a redesign of the golf course to have a minimum of 18-hole par 72 course, which would more than likely eliminate the executive course as it currently sits. Part of that task also would be for that design professional to look at property south of the existing golf course to see if any of that can be used for an expansion of the golf course. They would also look elsewhere in the community, which has been interpreted to be the west side of I-15, because that's where the largest open spaces are, and potentially a canyon course or a mountain course. Those 2 last statements would be more of a third tier, not the primary responsibility or a primary role. Again, it would be the redesign of the 3 on the Cooney property. But again, to answer the specific question on the south wedge, whatever holes were impacted, and again, roughly following what's been outlined up there, whatever holes are impacted, those holes would need to be accommodated on the balance of the course. And again, more than likely, that would eliminate the executive course.
Is there land, does the city have land south or west of the freeway, or would that have to be acquired?
That land would have to be acquired. The city does own 2 sections or 2 areas of land in the canyon, at the mouth of the canyon. And Tara could probably give us what those numbers are, and then we own land up South Fork. Probably
I'm aware of that, but nothing contiguous to the current course.
Well, we do own land south of the course that was part of the mitigation for the extension of the airport runway, and it has not been determined either through the Army Corps of Engineers or even structurally whether golf could even be built there or whatever. It would also have some potential complications because it is further from the clubhouse.
Okay, thank you.
George?
We would have 15 years to make those decisions, I assume.
Well, 13, but because if you were going to put that in motion, part of what the design professional would be tasked with is not wait for 13 years, but start looking at some of that right now. But you're right, 15 years.
What has been the dialogue about the mountain course, a world championship Johnny Miller course in the...
I'd probably defer to Scott or Brett on what that has been. I mean, certainly it's been looked at, but my understanding is that there would need to be more property acquired
from the government,
from somebody. When that somebody would probably be the Forest Service. There are still question marks on the soil stability or the structural stability of the material that's up there, and not so much for the golf course and all that. That could be an issue, but more for any buildings or structures. And then there are no current, other than maybe power, there aren't water, sewer facilities in that area.
So nothing definitive, just some ideas.
Just some ideas. There was, Albert Haley commissioned a layout a number of years ago for an 18-hole course with 30 or 40 home sites and then maybe a half a dozen business sites. But that's never been demonstrated as far as geotechnical that I'm aware of.
So probably you would look at the current course being expanded maybe to the west more than that, or?
Potentially if the ground could be acquired.
Who knows?
It's still up in the air.
Thank you.
Don't go away. I have a question. So the 21 acres where the 3 holes are, they would relocate those, but we would be basically giving the property or getting nothing for the property? So the 21 acres or the yellow wedge or the north wedge, the proposal would be that those 3 holes would be relocated to the Cooney property.
the cost of which would be paid for by Wasatch Educational. However, we would put that out to bid. So it would be a publicly bid process that if the Wasatch Educational, if they have a partner that would like to propose on that bid, they're certainly welcome to do that. We do not contemplate just saying, go build it for us. We would go through a public process to have that. We would oversee the design, obviously, and we probably couldn't go crazy on someone else's nickel, but I would also not think that it would be anything less than what we already have at the current golf course. So whatever that standard is, and again, I don't know what that is, and I'm assuming that the golf professional would make that determination, and the city would look at it, and Wasatch Educational would look at it, and I would expect that there would be a mutual agreement that this exceeds what we had wanted, or this is marginal, it has to be better. That would be that kind of conversation. Then it would be put out to public bid for construction.
Right, so what's the value of the Cooney property and the size of the Cooney property?
I don't know what the value is, but the size of it, it's about 21 to 22 acres. And because I don't think it was a part of the former landfill, although it could have been, I'm assuming that it has similar values in the area. And again, I don't know what's underneath it, so when our appraisals were completed on the north and the south wedge, it was appraised as if there were no challenges or concerns, because the appraiser, one, was not expert in what any of those subsurface expenses or challenges would be. So the instruction that they were given was to appraise it as if it were developable land. Developable land is a term of art that has a pretty big spectrum. I mean, anything is developable if you want to put enough money in it. So again, in part of the iterations of going back and forth on the value of the land, the city does have two appraisals. Wasatch Educational has been instructed that they may want to get their own appraisal. It's my understanding that they are having an appraisal done, and they've instructed their appraiser to then take construction information based on what they believe that costs will be to bring this property to a suitable site for construction purpose, so dealing with extraordinary costs. It's very possible or likely that, and this is based on just past knowledge of when the Southgate project was being developed with Boyer and Target, that the value of putting into the ground exceeded the value of the land as it currently sat.
Okay, so if we didn't already own the Cooney's property, we would have to go out
We'd have to go acquire that.
for about $6.3 million.
Potentially, yeah, I guess we could, if that was appraised at that price, then yeah.
Okay, thanks.
While you're there, Dixon, concerning the Cooney property, is there any plan or has there been any idea on how to use that property besides a golf course?
Well, that's a discussion that I have with the administration pretty regularly. My position is if we're not going to move golf there, can we market it for similar uses to what's just up the road for other uses in the PIC zone in the East Bay community, which have been anywhere from warehouse and distribution to light manufacturing to data centers or whatever. If we're not going to develop it as a golf course, and if that decision could ever be made, and I'm not being critical of the administration, it's just back and forth. Not always, but there have been for the last, at least since 2006 or 7, a proposal on the golf course that then contemplated moving holes to it. And based on that, we have never really marketed it for commercial purposes because we were always holding it and the potentiality that it would go there. But if a definitive decision were made that just golf is not moving there or whatever, then we would seek to then attract a commercial development on the 22 acres.
So there's some value there for the city. If we move those 3 holes to that section, we're giving up that value. So we're not only giving up the cost of the holes to develop, which I think was estimated about $1 million a hole. I think this is what's been thrown around a little bit.
Okay.
And then if the valuation for what we're giving up in the 21 acres in the North Wedge is $6 million, It seems like we're really going into a negative negotiation in the city's standpoint.
Well, that's only if the North Wedge doesn't have any value when it's developed, because if it does have value when it's developed, then you could say that what could have been developed on the 21 acres on the Cooney property is now being developed and taxable and creating jobs and capital investment on the North Wedge. So in my mind, I'm just saying you're trading. But there's no doubt.
But not until it's developed. Land for land, we're not doing that.
That's correct. Right now, the Cooney property, because it is owned by the city, is it's not being taxed, it's not generating any revenue.
I don't, go ahead, George, and I'll follow.
You're the Economic Development Director for the city,
So they keep telling me,
right?
yes.
And my understanding is from the meetings I've had with you and with the administration, with Mayor Curtis, they're in favor of medical school on the Wedge.
That's correct.
What will that do for East Bay?
So it does a couple of things. First, I would say that having a golf course in our community is a positive benefit to the community. Impacting the golf course certainly has costs, but for the last 10 to 12 years, there have been proposals to do something commercially in the East Bay area on the golf course for the purpose of enhancing and improving economic opportunities in our community. Provo City is a landlocked community. To the north, south, east, and west, we have mountains, lakes, and communities. And so the land we have is what we have, and that could be an argument for preserving the golf course. It also could be an argument for developing the golf course. A medical school at this location, in my mind, signals that the city is willing and welcoming continued development. A medical school has a certain level of prestige to it that just doesn't happen. If we had 2 other medical schools in Utah County, I'm not sure that we would be standing here advocating to take out a portion of the golf course for another medical school. It's kind of a unique operator. It does bring capital investment, brings taxable investment, it does bring jobs, it brings students. All that vibrancy contributes to the economic picture of our community. It also sends a signal to other property owners in the area that are counting on and looking for people to come to an area like the mall, like the East Bay side of the shopping center on the east side where Sam's Club. That signals that the city is willing and wanting to have investment in their community and maintaining a viable golf course. And viable golf course, I get, that is in the eye of the beholder, but I would hope that through a design professional that we could maintain at least a standard currently to what we have now.
It's always been my view that for the next 15 years at least, we're going to have what we have now with the golf course and a medical school and medical facilities. So
yes,
I don't think any of us would be willing to give up a golf course. We're not giving up a golf course. We're changing it, and there's going to be some impact. I think all of us realize that, but that's maybe the price of progress. I know the city fathers weren't willing to give up the downtown area and the mall went to Orem years ago. And we know what that's done to retail in our city. We could have had the mall in Provo had we been foresightful enough. And I think this is a similar situation. We can still have the golf course, and we can have a fantastic world-class medical city. I have a grandson, probably most like his grandfather, that's at TCU this year studying to be a nurse, anesthesiologist, because there was nothing available in Utah or in this area for him. So I have a personal interest in seeing that. Well, I think that's well understood. Thank you.
Gary?
I know that there's always been some concern about building on the dump. And apparently the Rocky Mountain has made some studies and they feel comfortable, and that's their ball. That's going to be their thing from now on, like you said, and I believe that. Have we looked, but what they're going to do is going to affect us. Have we looked at that study that they have done, and are we comfortable? Our engineers, have they looked at it to determine what they're proposing can actually be done. I know they hope it can be done, and they feel comfortable that it can be done. Are we also comfortable that it can be done? Have we seen that study, I guess, is what I want to know. Can we have access to it?
We paid for a portion of that study. We can have our building department and our engineering department look at that. And certainly that would something that we would need to have done. I don't believe that, I'm pretty confident that has not happened yet. Again, this is a similar conversation that when we were dealing with Target and with the Boyer Company, it was a similar conversation as far as how to deal with what used to be there or the former use as a landfill. And again, Boyer Company and Target were confident that through proper engineering techniques and construction techniques that they could address. In fact, at the time that we were dealing with this, Target had just built one of their facilities on a landfill in another community. East Coast, that was what they had related to us, and so they were not concerned. They were willing to go forward until we missed the construction season, and then they took their investment to Canada. But we can certainly have our building department and our engineering department take a look at the geotechnical study.
I just don't, I want to avoid the oops factor.
I'm with you. Yep, we don't want that.
We are still at the beginning of the public process, so I don't feel any, strong need to come to a decision right now. I think we're 50 minutes behind. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions, but I'm willing to wait for the answers. First, I would like to commend both groups on great presentations today. Hope you can see and the public sees that this question is weighing heavily on the council. But if we take a step back, this really is a good problem to have. We're choosing between two great options, and that is, I'm very grateful that that's the type of problems that we're looking at and dealing with today. I guess there are some other problems that are not nearly as nice. To the Parks and Rec, I'd say that there's no question that the East Bay Golf Course is a great amenity to the community. You guys have done a wonderful job managing it and providing the city with a great value. When we talk about a win-win, I'm looking at this and wondering if it's a situation, for another cliche, where we might have our cake and eat it too. You presented the wonderful work that you're doing. What I need to understand is, and we've alluded to it a little bit, but your presentation has been mostly, these are the great things that we're doing, and there's no question they're great things, but what do we actually lose in phase one? What do we actually lose in phase two? Do we lose the cross-country tournaments? At what point do we lose the golf tournaments? Are we really going to lose? And I guess some of this has already been answered, but are we actually going to lose the junior/executive course? And what can we do in those 15 years to try to prepare for that? What is the impact of this proposal on the open space, the wetlands, the wildlife that you presented? Are we still going to have some wildlife? Are we still going to have some wetlands? Are we still, again, your presentation was great, and I love what we're doing there, but how does this proposal directly affect that? What are we giving up? I need to understand that a little bit better. And again, I'd look for these answers at a later point. And then finally, there's been a lot of questions that have been brought up about the terms of the deal. I haven't received the details yet, so I look forward to getting those details and some presentations on the nuts and bolts of the proposal. But I imagine we're not going to get into that today. So thank you, and thank you to everyone. It's wonderful to be a part of this community and the people that are so passionate about the great quality of life we have here.
If that's the end of our questions, we need to move on. Yes, Cliff.
So staff has some thoughts and some questions on the public process going forward and looking for some input. It's our plan to take today's broadcast and make it available on our websites, our blogs, our Open City Hall, et cetera, to make it out there. The question's been raised as to the thinking is, and question is whether or not to have this as a public input item on December 5th at the next regular council meeting. But staff is asking me the same questions, and so the question to the council is, what do you see the process from today going forward for the next couple of weeks, couple of months? That's some direction we're asking for the council at work session to give us some guidance.
Yes, Dave.
My thought was that the first round of public input would be on December 5th. I think we had discussed that. And then at that time, depending on how the council felt, if there was sufficient interest in continuing that, then we would schedule the surplus for January 9th, and then have another round of public input and make the decision, or potentially continue it again if we weren't ready to make a decision at that point.
Does council have any concern about us publishing all this material on Open City Hall or other forums? Okay.
So, yes, Wayne.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Let me just, we haven't really talked about the specifics of how the decision gets made, and so maybe it would be helpful to do that. So because this property is in the ownership of Provo City, the law requires that we go through a formal public hearing process to declare the property surplus. That's a regulated statutory process that we need to go through given the value of the land. And so we do need to have a 14-day notice statutorily for the formal public hearing at which the council might make a decision on surplusing. And so there are a variety of ways that could happen. We currently have as you indicated, a normal council meeting on the 5th of December. We don't have 14 days notice. If you wanted to hold the surplusing hearing that night, we couldn't do that. There's not sufficient time to get the noticing through. So a couple of options that have been considered, and I've heard various council members suggest, is if you wanted to hold the surplusing meeting, if you had enough information now that you felt like you could be ready for a surplusing decision before the end of the year, you could schedule a special council meeting that would meet the 14-day notice. And so if, for example, you felt comfortable enough to move forward with setting a surplusing date, then the first possibility of doing that would be a special council meeting on the 12th of December. Absent that, unless you wanted to meet the week before Christmas, which council has traditionally avoided, then the first regular meeting that's been scheduled for the council would be the 9th of December. But I'm sorry, 9th of January. Boy, this has been a long day. And so 9th of January would be the next regularly scheduled meeting. So, and again, to get 14 days notice back from that, you'd probably have to make a decision to schedule that surplusing on the 5th or potentially the 12th. So there is a path to getting to a public hearing before the holidays if there's concern about losing momentum in one direction or the other. But again, the default probably would be going to absent any further direction from the council, be holding public input on the 5th and then making a decision to schedule a surplus meeting thereafter. But you could reach that decision today if you felt you had you would have enough information to make a decision by December 12th.
I would like to have scheduled a meeting on the 12th of December, but I couldn't find enough votes to do that. So,
and that's fine. We're again, as we've indicated, the process, any process of surplusing a piece of city property for development or redevelopment is a value question. And value questions are what city councils do best. That's why the voters put you in office, is to make those value determinations. And so there's value on both sides of this equation. It's a balancing act, and you have to conclude on which side the value is predominant. And that's and whatever process it takes you to get there is the process that we'd like to see you follow. So again, whatever you're comfortable with is from the administration side is fine with us.
Yes, George.
Yeah, my thought was the current council has been involved in this. It'd be nice for us to be able to make the decision with the current council, but
Certainly some value to that.
certainly some value in that, but there's also value in public input. And I think
Totally agree.
the consensus was there hasn't been enough public input, enough time for public input, and it would be best to do it in January.
Just want to make sure you were aware of the options available to you.
Unless some other council members would like to say they'd like to do it on the 12th of December, I'll finish.
Gary? What is if I remember, all we're doing, if we did something like that, I'm not ready, I am no way ready to accept an offer at this point.
Right. No, and we wouldn't think you would be.
And so on the 12th, if we're saying we're going to consider selling it, is all. I'm not, what does it entail to put it up for public sale, and what does that, I don't want to reflect to the public that we're selling the golf course.
Right.
All I would want to do is say, yeah, we're talking.
Yeah, so again, that it sort of depends on your level of comfort, and not necessarily about the deal, but about whether you're ready to hold a public hearing to consider surplusing it. Now, typically, the decision to surplus is the decision to surplus belongs to the council. The execution of the agreement is an administrative action, executive function, and so but again, we feel confident that you're not going to be ready to surplus the property unless you understand the terms and agree to them, or want to suggest other terms that would be agreeable to you if that exists. And so again, we would fully expect that the decision to surplus would be accompanied with conditions for the mayor, whoever that is at the time, will execute that process. So again, it depends on when and what you have a comfort level with.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, could I add something to that? Under our city ordinance, there's actually two different ways that you can surplus property, I'll put it that way, two different ways that you can surplus property. One is that the city ordinance lays out certain terms that must be met for selling any property that is on the surplus property list unless the resolution surplusing the property says otherwise. The practical effect of that is that one method of surplusing property is you can simply name a piece of property in the city that the city owns and wants to sell and put it on the surplus property list. If you do that, the administration can actually execute the sale of the property as long as they do so under the guidelines of the ordinance without ever coming back to you, okay? The other way, which is probably more common, at least in recent years, is for the administration to come to you with the proposed deal first before you ever even add it to the surplus property, and you accept by resolution placing it on the surplus property and the terms of the deal at the same time. And so you can do either one of those, but I just wanted to make it clear that if you do surplus the property, if you just simply add the property to the surplus property list without a specific deal being in place, it can be sold by the administration, but only in accordance with the terms and criteria of the ordinance.
Thank you. Gary?
And just to follow up, just a quick one. I am excited about a medical school potentially being here in Provo, and I'm very excited about our golf course. I've been on the Parks and Rec board, and it's a wonderful place, and I think we need to hear from our board members on this also. I noticed several of them here today, and they have not had a chance to really weigh in on this, and I'd appreciate them having the opportunity to talk about the things that they'd like to hear. We need more input from the citizens, I think, at this point, but I hope that this does not signal that I'm ready to give up on this medical school because I like the golf course too. I really hope we can work something out where we can get these things working together.
We'd be happy to ask the Parks and Recreation Board to weigh in if you'd like.
Okay, does that bring it to a conclusion so we can say thank you to you all and move on to our next item? Okay.